So Apple has announced the new iPad Air, and this is a typical spec refresh for the most part, and I know we need to wait for reviews before we judge this completely, but I want to say something up front. I don't think this is worth buying, so let's talk about why. Beginning with the regular 10.9-inch iPad Air, because yes, spoiler alert, there's now two size options. This really has not changed a lot. You have a new chipset, new colors, some small spec changes. The front-facing camera moving to a landscape orientation is quite nice, but on the whole, this is a very similar iPad to the iPad Air 5, which is still a very solid tablet in 2024. And that's the thing, guys, whilst the iPad Air 6 definitely hasn't got a price hike and it's going to be a great iPad, the fact it does nothing too revolutionary stops me from recommending this, when you can already find the older Air for $400 from third parties. Heck, if you wait a little longer, it might drop even lower, because retailers around now usually clear existing stock and functionally there isn't a massive difference. But now let's talk about the new size option, because I'm personally not a fan of this. We've recently been seeing Apple introduce a larger size option to many of their mid-range products. Take for example the iPhone 14 and 15 Plus, and of course the 15-inch MacBook Air, so yes, a new 12.9-inch Air is the next step in Timothy complicating Apple's lineups even further. And yeah, that's the biggest problem I have with the new size. The iPad range is a mess as is. There are frankly too many options that offer similar features, and introducing yet another iPad's not gonna fix things. If anything, I wanted them to simplify the range and get rid of some models. You see, I was fine with a 15-inch MacBook Air and an iPhone 15 Plus because there are clear differences between the regular and Pro models that are easy to understand, but with the iPad though, considering the software so limited with the Pros anyways, I always found the iPad Air and Pro to be way too similar anyways, and there's just not enough differences, and so adding a new size option that's even closer in price to the iPad Pros is not a right move. Now yes, you could argue it does make sense launching this because I'm sure there are consumers who want the big display experience the iPad Pro offers, but without the massive price tag, and so this should be adequate enough for most, right? Well, that's true in theory, but of course, this is not exactly a cheap iPad. I know the iPad Pros have gotten more expensive, but the 12.9-inch Air is still very much old iPad Pro territory pricing wise, and that's a hard pill to swallow because this is a 60Hz LCD iPad for $800, and frankly there's no point in buying this when you can go on Apple's refurbished site and find the M1 iPad Pro for much less, and that has mini LED 120Hz, and of course better cameras. Also eventually the M2 iPad Pro is going to be on the refurb site, and that's probably also going to be less than the new 12.9-inch iPad Air, so again, why would you buy this? And yes, I know many argue the same thing about the 15 Plus and the MacBook Air 15-inch, but at least with those products there is some sort of advantage they offer. The Plus has the best battery life in the range, the Air is considerably thinner and lighter than a Pro, but with the 12.9-inch iPad Air, there's really nothing special about it. It's not going to have better battery life than the Pro because it lacks a variable refresh rate and OLED, and while yes, it's called the iPad Air, the Pro is actually the thinner device. So again, say it with me guys, what's the point in this? You know what makes plain sense though? Subscribing to this channel, of course. I would greatly appreciate it, and it'll bring you the latest about Apple right to subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. We're trying to hit our next milestone of 16,000 subscribers, so join the Saranbyte gang now. Anyways, if you're still wondering why Apple's released a larger iPad Air, it's clear to me Apple just wants to continue creating the perfect ladder of choices, so that if you go to the Apple store thinking you want the Air, but then you see the Pro that's only slightly more, you might end up buying that instead. And Timothy's just manipulated you. He's going to be very happy, and the board, of course, is going to be very happy. And so that's the reason this new iPad is a thing. Also, without the new size option, the Air 6 would be a very boring refresh to market. This feels akin to the iPhone XS and 14 in that the main thing they'll have to flex is the new size option, because there's really nothing else to talk about. A new chipset and some new colors are not game-changing updates. I guess it's not all bad news because, of course, like most Apple devices nowadays, it will eventually go on sale, and maybe it will be $650 in a few months, in which case that's a good deal and I could recommend it at that price. The same goes for the 10.9-inch size. But ultimately, the only advice I give you guys is that you should not buy this at retail price. Nowadays, when it comes to spec upgrades, they're getting so minimal, so you can pay a lot less and get a very similar experience from the older iPads. I know there's some fancy AI features coming soon that some older models might not support, but frankly, I don't care about that, guys. I'd rather just save my cash and get the iPad Air 5 for my basic needs, and I'm sure most have basic needs on these tablets because their software is so restricted in the first place. Also, I will be honest, instead of launching a 12.9-inch iPad Air, launching a larger base iPad would have been great, since kids and students might want something larger that's maybe around $500, but I guess offering a 13-inch display at that kind of price would be too good of a deal to offer directly. And as I said, the whole purpose of this larger L is to get you to buy those new expensive shiny iPad Pros. And actually, I thought I had some other points regarding this iPad. Number one, why are the colors so muted, Apple? Why not give us some bright colors like the base iPads? I'm still not a fan of the barely blue. I prefer the iPad Air 5 blue, so that's another reason to go with the older iPads. But anyways, the colors are pretty mid on the whole, I'm not a fan. Also, Apple does claim the sizes are 11 inches and 13 inches, but the press photos don't show thinner bezels, it looks about the same. So are they now rounding up to 11 inches and 13 inches in the marketing? I'm not sure, we'll have to wait and see till people get hands-on with these iPads. Also, I was kind of surprised by the lack of an M3 chipset because with the iPad Pro getting M4, surely it made sense to give the Air the M3 because M2 is over a year old now, and yes, I know chips don't make a big difference. iPadOS is not exactly pushing these chips, but it would have been nice to see M3 because that would have given the Air ray tracing, which of course is a big deal for gaming. Also nice to see the pencil still attaches in the middle, even with the landscape camera, and I'm glad the Pro Pencil is coming to the Air as well because the new tool palette feature looks very nice. Also the haptic feedback I'm sure is going to be great. So yeah, that is quite nice. But as I said, I don't think it's enough to justify getting this over the iPad Air 5, especially since there are no display changes, though I will say, to give Apple some credit, double the base storage is very much appreciated. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching. You know that meme, it's been 84 years? That's what comes to mind when I see any report regarding AirPods Max 2 because it seems like we've been waiting forever for these to launch, and yet nearly 4 years later, they're still not here. And unfortunately, the few crumbs of information we've been getting sounds pretty disappointing. So let's delve into that as well as the rumored release date and price. So recently, Mark Gurman gave us a pretty weird report claiming AirPods Max 2 will not really be a